Hello, it's time for Combat Patrol Carnage. It's our final video for issue 25, and now it's time for us to learn the rules for our Tyranids as we uncover the Synapse and Shadow in the Warp rules, which are their faction abilities. This is going to be very much the same as our Oath of Moment tutorial, so we're in the middle of a battle. I'll set the battlefield up, I'll follow the guide, and we'll see how the rules interact with the battlefield and the army in general. So before we hit the table and learn our new rules, don't forget to do all the usual. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop me a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys, and it goes a massive way to help out this channel as well. Finally then, Combat Patrol Carnage is proudly sponsored by warbay.shop, your one-stop supply for all your hobby needs. They stock everything from new and used models for your various different armies and game systems, to your hobby supplies and your gaming equipment as well. They also have a backlog of previous Hachette partworks collections, as well as the brand new Combat Patrol collection. So if you want some extra issues, check them out. There's a link in the video description for you, and who knows, you might find your next hobby project at a bit of a discount. Right, let's head to the table and we'll learn all about Synapse and the Shadow in the Warp. Hello, here we are then, back with issue 25 for our final time, which is our gaming articles. As you can see, got the Librarian and Winged Tyranid Prime here, as it is the focus of the Tyranids and the Space Marines in battle as we learn all about the Tyranid faction abilities. So let's put these to one side, and first off we got a little bit of reading to do, so let's dive right on in. So, into our magazine we go. That's what we read last time. So here we are. Tyranid faction abilities. The Tyranid faction abilities, Synapse and Shadow in the Warp, allow you to gain specific advantages on the battlefield. Synapse increases your unit's resilience to battle shock while they are near to certain creatures. Shadow in the Warp is a psychic attack on your enemy that forces them to take battle shock tests. First off then, a look at Synapse. The Tyranids are directed by their higher intelligence that flows throughout an entire force, eclipsing the will and direction of each individual Tyranid. This intelligence is called the Hive Mind, and it is formed of the collective consciousness of the Tyranid species. The will of the Hive Mind is relayed to the Tyranid troops on the front line through the minds of leader beasts, which are often referred to as Synapse creatures. As the Hive Mind's will flows across an army, those closest to the leader beasts are bolstered, becoming even more resilient. Even as their fellow Tyranids are mowed down by hails of deadly gunfire, those that are close to the Synapse creatures will hold their ground, undaunted by the horrors of war. While a Tyranid's unit from your army is within 6 inches of one or more friendly Synapse model, that Tyranid's unit is said to be within Synapse range of those models and of your army. Each time a Tyranid's unit from your army takes a battleshock test, if it is within range of a Synapse creature, take the test on 3d6 instead of 2d6. Example, Synapse. In this example, the unit of termagants must take a battleshock test because they are within 6 inches of the Tyranid Prime, which has the Synapse keyword. They are able to take the test within 3d6 instead of a 2d6. The player rolls 1, 4, and 5 for a total of 10. The termagants have a leadership of 8+, so this is enough for them to pass the test. They will continue to get this bonus d6 to battleshock tests as long as they stay within the Synapse range of the Tyranid Prime. So yeah, as long as you're within 6, even if it is 1 or 2 models, you count to be within Synapse range. So the Winged Tyranid Prime has a Synapse keyword. Here we see him exerting his will over the termagants here, who have lost half their number and now must take a battleshock test, which luckily they pass. Shadow in the Warp. As a Tyranid Hive fleet approaches, it emanates a strong psychic field that overwhelms warp communications and cuts entire worlds off from the Immaterium. Nobody knows for certain whether this is an intentional attack or simply a byproduct of the hive mind communicating across Tyranid forces. Either way, it has proved a potent disruptor that affects all psychically attuned species who face a hive fleet massing for an attack. From the outside, worlds that rely on warp communication seem to suddenly fall into complete silence. All transmissions going dark for no apparent reason. On the worlds themselves, now isolated and cut off from all exterior help, a deep psychic malaise grows, gnawing at minds of the combatants, weakening their resolve and turning their minds to bleak thoughts of the horror that is to come once battle is joined. Once per battle, in either player's command phase, if one or more units from your army with this ability are on the battlefield, you can unleash the Shadow in the Warp. When you do, each enemy unit on the battlefield must take a Battleshock test. Example, Shadow in the Warp. In this example, the Tyranid player uses Shadow in the Warp during the Space Marines command phase, and the Space Marines units must take Battleshock tests. The player rolls a total of 8 for the Librarian, higher than leadership of 6, which passes. The Captain and Terminators also pass. However, the player rolls only a 4 for the Infernus Marines, who fail, and this is lower than their leadership characteristic of 6+. So even the mighty Space Marines can be shook with the encroaching power of the Shadow of the Warp. And the Tyranid player has chosen the perfect time, as the Space Marines are in control of all 4 battlefield objectives. So he wants to try and disrupt them and stop them from scoring points. So he unleashes the Shadow in the Warp. Luckily though, 3 out of 4 units pass, so the Space Marines are really overly unfazed. Alright, next up we have our tutorial Tyranid faction abilities. Shadow in the Warp and Synapse are the Tyranid faction abilities. Synapse allows you to leverage the power of your hive mind to strengthen your own troops, whereas Shadow in the Warp allows you to use Psychic Force to try to break your opponent's troops. We start at the beginning of turn 2. The Infernus squad has moved forward to take an objective and has been charged by the Termagants. The Terminators and the Captain are each positioned over an objective and are poised to score victory points. The Tyranid forces are getting ready to attack. So yeah, pretty much the same battlefield as last time, so we'll set this up and we'll go through our guide stage by stage. So here we are then, all set up, ready to begin our training scenario. Example. So we got Terminators, Captain, Infernus Squad, and Librarian. Leapers, Psychophage, Barbed Gaunts, Prime, and a depleted unit of Termagants. So we begin with Space Marines turn 2. At the start of their second turn, the Space Marines look set to score victory points before moving into position to unleash more ranged attacks against the Tyranid forces. The Infernus Marines are locked in combat with the Termagants and will be busy for a few turns at least. At the start of the Space Marine command phase, the Tyranid player uses Shadow in the Warp. 2 units fail the Battleshock tests. The Space Marine selects a Psychophage as open moment ability. At the end of the phase, only the Captain is controlling an objective, so the Space Marine player scores 1 victory point. So our units that have failed are the Terminators and the Infernus Squad. Movement phase. The Infernus Marines remain in combat with the Termagants. The Terminators stay where they are, ready to engage the Psychophage. They must stay out of engagement range of enemy troops and therefore cannot get much closer to the Psychophage without charging. The Librarian moves to the side of the Infernus Marines. Shooting phase. The Captain unleashes a volley of fire at the Tyranid Prime. The Terminators fire at the Psychophage, grievously wounding it. As the Psychophage was nominated as the open moment target for this turn, the Terminators are able to re-roll their failed hit rolls. Space Marines charge phase. The Space Marine player decides not to charge of any units this turn, preferring to keep their troops mobile and able to fire with their ranged weapons rather than engaging in risky close combat. Space Marine Fight Phase. The Tyranid player fights with the 14 remaining Termagants, as they have no other units in combat to choose from. They kill one Infernus Marine. In retaliation, the Infernus Marines attack the Termagants, killing 5, leaving 9 still standing. So, on the next page we have an example. So, example, Space Marine turn. As the Terminators have failed the Battle Shock test, they have objective control of 0. This means that they won't score victory points this turn. Battle tip. Shadow in the Warp is more effective during your opponent's turn. This is because enemy troops recover from Battle Shock at the start of their next command phase. If you use the ability on your own turn, any Battle Shocked units will return to normal before your opponent's opportunity to score victory points. However, Battle Shock has other disadvantages too. So although it might be more effective to use during your opponent's turn, that doesn't mean it is useless in your own. You can still deny your opponent the option to influence the unit with stratagems and make it harder for them to fall back from combat. So a couple of key ideals to help you decide when to unleash your Shadow in the Warp. We move on to the Tyranids' turn. The Tyranids weathered a strong attack from the Space Marines. Now that it's their turn, they will be looking to attack strongly in reply. Thanks to a good use of their faction ability in the last turn, the Space Marines missed out on victory points, and the Tyranids must not squander this advantage. Tyranid Command Phase. The Termagants have lost 5 of their number, taking them down to 9 models. As this is less than half of their starting strength, they must take a Battleshock test. They are still within 6 inches of a unit with the Synapse keyword, so they take the test on 3d6 instead of 2d6. The extra dice gives them the boost they need to pass the test. At the end of the command phase, the players determine that the Termagants objective control 3, and the Tyranids score victory points. If it were not for the Synapse ability, the Termagants would have been battle shocked and would not have been able to control the objective. Tyranids movement phase. The Tyranid Prime moves to the right of the battlefield, just out of engagement range of the Librarian. And the unit of Infernus Marines. The Von Ryan's Leapers move towards the top of the battlefield, giving them easy access to the exposed flank of the Terminators. Tyranids shooting phase. The Termagants are in combat with the Infernus Marines and must rely on the close combat weapons for now. The Barb Gaunts open fire on the captain with their barb launchers, causing a wound. Tyranids charge phase. The Tyranid Prime successfully charges the Librarian. The Von Ryan's Leapers successfully charge the flank of the unit of Terminators. Tyranids fight phase. No Space Marine units have the fight first ability, so the Tyranid player attacks the Terminators with the Von Ryan's Leapers, then they pick the Tyranid Prime. Next, the Space Marine player picks the Infernus Marines to fight. The Termagants then retaliate. Next, the Space Marine player chooses the Terminators, and finally the Librarian. So, example turn for the Tyranids. We have a Battle Shock test, so we roll it on 3d6 as we are within the Synapse range of the Winged Prime. Then we have an example. The Termagants have a leadership characteristic of 8+. This means that they have to roll 8 or higher to pass the Battle Shock test. Normally, Battle Shock tests are done by rolling 2d6. With a 2d6 roll, it is more likely than not that the result will be a 7 or lower. This means that the unit Termagants are more likely to fail than to pass a Battle Shock test. When they use the Synapse faction ability, they are able to make the roll with 3d6 instead. With 3d6, the Tyranid player is more likely to roll higher than an 8, enough to pass the Battle Shock test. This means that when the Termagants are able to use the Synapse faction ability, they are more likely to pass the test than fail it. So there we have it. That's Synapse and Shadow in the Warp put into action. So hopefully when we have some bigger games, we'll get to use these for ourselves. and we'll see just how influential they are in the game. But we have a recap to read, and then we have a look at what's next in our next 2 issues. So let's head back to the magazine. So back to our magazine, we've got a recap then to read for Shadow in the Warp and Synapse. Tyranid abilities recap. Both Shadow in the Warp and Synapse are Tyranid faction abilities. Synapse allows your units to use an extra dice when taking battleshock tests, as long as they are within 6 inches of a friendly unit with the Synapse keyword. Shadow in the Warp allows you to force your opponent's units to take battleshock tests. Things to remember. Synapse. The Synapse faction ability works on as many units as you can get within 6 inches of a unit with the Synapse keyword. If you maneuver your units carefully, you can give this advantage to a large portion of your army. Synapse faction ability gives you a sizable advantage when taking battleship tests, but it does not guarantee that you will pass. You should still have a backup plan in case your unit fails a test. There is no restriction on the number of times you can use the Synapse faction ability. If your unit is within Synapse range of a unit with the Synapse keyword, then you will get that extra d6 each time it takes a battleship test. Shadow in the Warp. The Shadow in the Warp ability gives you a chance to inflict battleshock on your opponent's units. This will last until the start of their next command phase. You can only use Shadow in the Warp faction ability once per battle, so choose your timing wisely. One of the main effects of battleshock is the reduction of a unit's objective control characteristic to 0. However, there are still other effects. The unit will struggle to fall back and cannot benefit from stratagems. So that leads us into what's our next issue. So issue 26 brings us the mighty Wraithlord for Eldari faction. So beautiful model, towering monstrosity, perfect for adding to our Eldari combat patrol. So we build and paint our Wraithlord, we learn a bit about the Spirit Stones and Aspect Warriors, and we have an awesome play scenario where we face wave upon wave of Tyranids, just to see how badass this guy can be. And after that, we have not 1, not 2, but 3 issues of Wind Rider jet bikes, starting in issue 27, where we get our first 2. We learn about relayering, and we also start to look at the core rules. So very rules and paint-focused issue 27. So that's going to be very helpful. Can't wait to get that issue and dive in and start relayering our models. So I'm guessing it'll be relayering up the skin of the Tyranids and possibly areas on some of the Eldari stuff. Maybe we'll have a look more at painting the Eldari models that we have. But yeah, there we have it. That's our next 2 combat patrols. Really exciting one. And yeah, can't wait to see, because we've got some very nice issues to come with some very nice content in the magazine. Plus those jet bikes are awesome. Nice update to the classic model. But that is it for issue 25. Hope you enjoyed it. Very short videos. We haven't had a lot to cover. Lore was very short, and of course the tutorial was, well, just a couple of pages of showing us how to make use of the abilities, etc. But yeah, it's been helpful, and we'll be able to bring what we've learnt into effect when we play our next big battle, which hopefully will be issue 27. So yeah, like I said, up next we've got the Wraithlord, so we'll be building and painting him, and yeah, we'll be adding a new monstrous creature to our Eldari. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you've enjoyed updating more Combat Patrol knowledge. And all that's left for me to do then is to say thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time on more Combat Patrol Carnage. Goodbye.